It's month 3 for King's Crown block of the month, and today we're going to talk about how to make the kite block. So based on the instructions, you should have the corner beam template, and we recommend, whether you're paper piecing or doing the non-paper piece method, that you print out this form to help keep track of all your colors. So from your template, you want to cut this out with a cardstock, and basically on your 6 3/4 inch square that you've made, you're going to lay this on, matching your corner. Matching your corner right up in here, and lay on the other part down here, but it's important to match your corner up here so you get the nice 90, and the other you could trim off if it's a little bit bigger by any means. And then you want to just carefully trim right along that line. All right, once this is cut out, you want to go ahead and set your template aside and lay your angle onto the paper piecing template just to keep track of where you want to go. And then take your 2 rectangles. You're going to have your right sides together, wrong side facing up, and you want to pay attention with your instructions for each time you make this block, because sometimes these 2 pieces may not match, but for today they're both going to match for our things. Now you're going to want to put 5/8 inch dot on the upper left hand corner there, and a 5/8 inch dot down here, and then you're going to want to cut between the 2. That point you now have, and you can lay 1 piece over here and 1 piece over here, and you're ready to go ahead and put that block together. So now to assemble your block, you want to take section A1 and flip it over your centerpiece. Now, to help you line this up, since important coverage, we say to give about a 3/8 inch gap right down here at this end. That area is in most cases going to get trimmed off, and that will give you what you want to have. So you want to lay that down and either pin or glue. You want to get this as close. This is one time it's really nice to be accurate. Now, whether you take a 1/4 inch seam, a true 1/4 inch, or a miter, is something you're going to have to adjust for yours. Because I use fairly thin thread, I always do pretty close to a true 1/4 inch seam to make this come out. If you're reluctant on it, go ahead and do a scant 1/4 inch, because when we do the measuring and we at the end, as we go to make sure the block before we trim it to square, there is an option to be able to actually make slight adjustments. So go ahead and press this seam open. And at this point, you're ready to lay the next piece on. Same thing, you want the 3/8 inch gap down here. And now we're ready to go sew it. So at this point, we can go ahead and press this seam open. Now we're ready to trim. Now the easiest way to trim this is with a 6.5 inch square. I like the Creative Grid 6.5 inch because it has the markings where I need them to be for this to come out correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. Now at this point, we want to make sure that at this corner, right here, that we're lining up to our 1/4 inch. And then you can look over here. I actually have a little white line. Let's show that on here. There's a little white line where my 1/2 inch comes and my 1/4 inch comes. There's that little white line there. And that's actually where I need my needle to hit when I'm putting my two seams together. So I'm going to line that up, and I've got another one over here. And if you see that if I have my 1/4 inch at the top, at the bottom corner I have it lined up just right. I'm a little off here. I don't know if you can see it in the camera or not, but it's just a tiny bit bigger than it needs to be. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little seam, just a tiny, tiny bit bigger, right through there, just a little bit bigger of a seam that will allow this to be the right size I need it to be. If you see, it's really hard to see on this, but I started stitching about here, and I just stitch right next to my line all the way through here. This is a really good trick to know. It works for flying geese if your area is too open, you keep from cutting off your points, square and a triangle and a square. Squares like that where you've done this type of style, you can make the adjustment to keep your point by doing these little adjustments. Because you've got this inside area. You've got this inside area that's very important for you to get it correct. All right, so let's go back and measure. At this point, I've got my 1/4 inch up here where I need it to be. I've got my section here where I need it to be, and my ruler slides just a slight bit, so I will try to go very slow and careful. And I'm going to go ahead and trim this to size. Now, I think that was a very easy block to make. It's exactly where it needs to be. There's a measurement here of 3 1/4 inches that comes from, and I've got the 3 1/4 inches. Let's see if I can put something on here so you can see that. It happened to be a little, you can't see it on here, but my lines are basically 1, 2, 3 1/4 inch on each side. So, and what that tells you is when I lay this on here, if you're using a different ruler, you want this measurement from here, the outside, 1, 2, 3 1/4 is where my seam, this is where my seams are going to cross, or my needle's going to hit. So if I have another point, this spot right here is where I want the other point to meet to make this come together perfectly. Same down here. This is 3 1/4, which is basically halfway because this is 1, 2, 3. So it's either way you go. So that's it. That's how simple this block is. If you make this with paper piecing, I found that I think in the pressing is where my paper shrunk a little bit. Maybe it's just the newsprint I was using. However, I did the same measurement. I knew I could trim up on this area up here. I could trim properly on paper piecing, but I did have to go back on the paper piecing, I did had to go back and I could trim there, but this was off, so I had to use the same basic ruler method and do this trim and this trim. So if you paper piece and you're more comfortable doing that, go ahead and use your lines here and use the ruler. But what you learned today on how to use this ruler to trim this block, you want to trim this section and this section of the paper piecing. If you can lay your 6-inch square on top of here and everything lays together, then you don't need to do that. But like I said, when I sewed this angle here, for some reason it distorted, and this no longer was 6.5-inch square.